Right on, man. It's episode 78 of the Rock Savages podcast. You guys can find us at rocksavagepod.com. You can also subscribe, follow, rate, and review on your favorite podcast networks such as Apple Podcast, Spotify, Stitcher, YouTube, and any other podcast platform that you can think of. And now, that's out of the way, you know what I mean? So, I'm excited about this one. Super excited. This might be my favorite one yet. This is a real dream guest today for me. It's another drummer. We certainly cover a lot of drummers on this podcast. And it's because I book a lot of the guests. So, naturally, I'm going to book some drummers. Because if you know who I am, you know I'm a drummer in a rock and roll band. Multiple rock and roll bands at that. So, yeah, man, drummers are really interesting, They don't get a lot of coverage. They don't get a lot of credit, to be honest with you. Definitely in the songwriting process, it's usually the guitar player or the singer getting all of the attention. And there's nothing wrong with that at all. I love plenty of singers and guitar players, bass players alike, But this next guy, I'm just going to tell you. It's JP Gaster from Clutch, and this guy is something else, man. I mean, he is one of the best drummers on the rock and roll scene today. He has been for quite a long time. He's one of my ultimate favorites, a big influence on my playing and many, many others out there, I'm sure. This guy is, he's a very important part in the songwriting process with Clutch. You can tell, with a lot of the off-time signatures that he does, and you can just tell, man. I mean, they build a lot of the songs around what JP does on the drums. So I think that's why he's one of my favorite drummers. I love drummers who play for the song, and we get into that a little bit in this interview. He gives a little bit of his philosophy on recording and writing music with the other guys in Clutch, and I couldn't have been more thrilled to have him on. It was kind of tough to get him on. They seemed a little aloof as far as their booking agent management goes, but they finally got back to me, and man, it was pretty fucking cool. I had a really good time talking to him. I mean, JP's just a super nice guy, very generous with his time, very generous with my questions as far as his answers went. And, man, we had a blast talking, and it was just really easy. And those are the best interviews you can possibly do on a podcast, or, wherever you're doing interviews, So I hope you guys really enjoy it, man. I was really happy and proud of this one. And hopefully we'll have him back on sometime. Hopefully we get the other guys from Clutch on, too, because they're also just as important to that band as anyone. They're equals in this one. So, and that's rare. All the guys in Clutch are original members, which you don't really see much anymore. There always somebody's getting replaced. It's tough being in a rock band. So, especially at the age they're at, So, I mean, the families and children and houses and, wives and everything, all of that comes into play. So, props to these guys for sticking it out and getting better at their craft and respecting the art of rock and roll as much as they do and contributing to it as much as they do, So I guess I'll just end my rant here. I'm sure you guys want to just get into this episode. I want you to hear it. So here it is. It's episode 78 with JP Gaster from Clutch. All of my friends know that I love nitro cold brew coffee. It's my new obsession, and my new favorite is the cold brew nitro from Caveman Coffee Company. It is perhaps the smoothest and most powerful nitro that I have had yet. It probably has something to do with the fact that the folks at Caveman Coffee care about their process from start to finish. They deliver single-sourced goodness in the interest of ethics, health, and maintaining a coffee product of unmatched quality. Try their Nitro Cold Brew or a variety of other products at www.cavemancoffeeco.com and enter discount code ROCK at checkout to save 15% off of your order.
Hello.
Hello, JP.
Yes.
Hey, how's it going, man? This is Bo from the Rock Savages podcast.
Hey, Bo. How are you?
Very good, man. Thanks for taking the call, man. I'm a
No
huge
problem.
fan. Been listening to you guys for a long time. I just wanted to start it off by asking how you guys are doing. It looks like, judging from the live broadcast on YouTube, it looks like you guys are doing okay.
Well, we sorted out streaming, and in very basic terms, I think it's been it's been fun. The last 2 weeks, I think the four of us collectively have probably learned more than we have in the previous couple of years. We sorted out the broadcasting software for the streaming, and we're sorting out the audio end of that as well. And so it's been fun. It's been challenging, but when we are faced with challenges, I think we all hopefully we come out the other side a little smarter than when we went in.
Yeah, that's a good mindset for sure. Neil had said I watch both of them, of course, because I'm a mega fan. But Neil said that you guys are probably going to plan on doing this more often, even after things get back to normal. Is that the case?
Yeah, and I think that's going to go for everybody. The the things that we musicians learn, I think are going to stick with us. It's not as if this streaming thing is going to go away.
Right.
Hopefully we look forward to getting back on stage and playing shows and trying to resume, some kind of normal touring life. But I think this is just going to be another avenue for musicians to explore, to get their music out there, to experiment with it. We're just scratching the surface, I think, of what we can do in that platform. So it's fun, and we're going to just keep pushing the envelope and just keep trying to learn new stuff.
While you guys have been on this downtime, I know you guys had to postpone the tour with Volbeat. Is that going to continue forward sometime in the future, or is you guys
Yeah. We're looking at postponing that, rescheduling that for the fall. I think they're trying to get that together now. Fingers crossed that will happen. We have our South American dates that unfortunately we weren't able to do this year. We've got those rescheduled for next spring. We'll be announcing that in a few days.
Nice.
And then a lot of the festivals that we were supposed to play this summer, I think we're going to try to reschedule those for next summer as well. So it's been a busy few weeks as far as booking goes.
Yeah, right. Yeah, kind of threw everybody into shambles, really. I mean, I guess you guys are probably doing all right, but I mean, there's a lot of smaller bands that are pretty much struggling. I just talked to Kyle from the Sword a few weeks ago, and they're kind of in a little jam. The Primus tour just got canceled. They were supposed to open that, so it's kind of a shame to see that kind of stuff going on right now. But
yeah, and it's tough, because it's of course there's musicians involved, but then there's all the other folks that put a lot of hard work into the shows that are also out of work. Folks who work at the club, sound technicians, light technicians, bartenders, loaders, beer distributors, people who are in the office, tour managers, bus drivers, truck drivers. It's an entire economy that really gets supported by the touring industry, and everybody's hurting. So, our circumstance is not unique. It's tough for people across the board.
yeah, it's we're musicians too, and we were talking the other day with one of our friends, and it's just like, man, I don't even know some of these clubs are gonna be here when everything gets back to quote normal. It's very concerning in that aspect, because we play small rooms, obviously, 100 150 people, 200 people, and it's just like, I don't know how those places are gonna pull through, but maybe they will. We'll see how it goes.
Well, I think we're sort of hoping those are the venues that actually sort of lead the way and getting folks back out there and seeing music. Obviously, I think bigger shows with bigger capacities, it's going to be more difficult for them to get to have a show that's successful. But your 100 150 cap rooms, they actually might be the thing that leads the way for us all. And I'll tell you right now, man, if we had a show booked in a 150 capacity room, I would be thrilled to death.
I bet, man. I mean, I've seen you in those rooms. I saw you once at the Night Bingy in Youngstown. I know you guys played that a bunch of times. I'm in Ohio, out of Akron.
Yeah.
So Oh, well, at least I think I saw you because it was so small. I couldn't really see the band. I obviously could hear you. I just saw the tops of your head. So allegedly, you were there.
Yeah, we were there. We did that gig a few times. That was a really fun place to play, kind of out in the middle of nowhere. Nothing really around there. I think
Yeah,
I remember maybe there's a gas station down the way that had hot dogs, and that was about your selection there for the culinary world. I think.
I know, man. It was like way out in the middle of nowhere. It seemed like it was in a cornfield or something. But yeah, I know you guys played there. I mean, it seems like Clutch kind of cut their teeth in Ohio. You guys played here all the time. I'm talking in the earlier days, you know. I mean, you guys were here
Absolutely.
all the time, and there was a small station right outside of Akron, a small high school station that was playing Spacegrass, and I think it kind of blew you guys up around here, you know.
Yeah, we started going to Ohio in the very earliest days of the band. In fact, our very first U.S. tour that took place in the summer of 1991, the first town that we hit on that tour was actually Columbus, Ohio, and we played a place called Freakin' Pizza.
Right.
And it was a hardcore matinee. Um, and since then, Toledo's been great. We played Columbus, man, I don't know how many times. uh, Youngstown, of course, Cleveland,
Right.
Toledo, um,
On and on.
Ohio. I think it's a great place for rock and roll. The folks there are very passionate about music, um, and and there's a lot of folks there that will support the music there. So it's great. Ohio is a wonderful state.
It is, man. We have a cool little tight knit scene here, you know. So it's kind of do it yourself underground ish, but I mean, it's Ohio's always been a rock and roll state. I mean, it has a deep, rich history in rock and roll, in the rock and roll genre specifically, and it blows my mind. I hear more and more stories as the years go on. People keep coming out of the woodwork, and it's pretty crazy. There's a lot of history here. We're like right outside of Kent, and yeah, man. I mean, there's so many stories coming out of here, but yeah, I mean, Ohio was pretty important for you guys. I mean, I saw you guys the first time. I mean, I'm a longtime fan. I saw the first time I saw you guys was open up for Pantera at the Jar in Akron, and
Yeah.
I was hooked from that time moving forward. And that was your guys' first big tour. Was it as crazy as it seemed to be being around the guys in Pantera? Because those crowds were so rowdy. It was a fun rowdy, though. I mean,
Yeah,
what
it was great. That was a great tour for us. In the early days of the band, we had the opportunity to play with lots of different kinds of bands. Bands that we didn't necessarily sound like. Um, but for each one of those gigs that we did, we gained some fans, and the Pantera tour was a great example of that. Not everybody in the crowd, I think, dug our sound, but but there were a few who did. And we did the same thing when we opened for Sepultura.
right?
Same thing when we opened for Prong, Marilyn Manson, Bad Religion, Monster Magnet. These are all bands that took us out in the early days, and I think because of that, we really have a pretty wide ranging fan base as far as what folks listen to out there.
Right.
Um,
It was
and I
smart.
think
It was really smart. Whoever was booking your tours for you back then, because yeah, like you said, it was so diverse. I mean, I saw you guys open it for Limp Bizkit too, so it went from Pantera to Limp Bizkit and everyone in between.
there you go. That's
Yeah,
yeah, right. That's another great example. Limp Bizkit. When we were offered that tour, thought, I don't know, man, do we really want to do that? Um, but in the end, same thing. Those dudes were super cool to us. The tour was fun. We hung out with Seven Dust quite a bit too. We got to know those guys. They were great dudes. Really fun tour. I mean, I, as a touring musician, I think it's important to realize that in those early years that you're out there is no such thing as a bad tour.
right.
You just got to get out there. You just have to play. You got to bite the bullet, and you got to do the work. And sometimes those tours are easier than others. Having the opportunity to open for a band like Pantera, that's great, man. There's a built-in crowd there.
Right.
The bands were great. The crews were super helpful to us. But then you got to go out. You got to do the 150 cap rooms, and you can't be afraid to do that. And and those shows are as enjoyable or more enjoyable sometimes than the bigger ones.
That's what separates a band like Clutch from a lot of other bands, because I've seen similar artists do the same thing, and I've kind of wondered, because I'm a big fan of the Black Crowes as well. And when those guys took hiatuses or broke up or whatever, I mean, like, I'd see Rich Robinson out on tour, playing 150 cap room, and it's like, dude, you're my guy. After that, I'm like, yeah, you're in this for the right reasons, and you go from playing with Jimmy Page at 30,000 seat arenas to 150 capacity rooms, and it's like that's what separates the men from the boys, pretty much. I mean, they're lifers, and that's the kind of thing that I appreciate, and I see similarities in the style of how you guys tour, and like in their style. It's kind of like it's been a cult following, blowing up a little bit at a time over the years.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
No problem. Yeah, I mean, it's that you guys are in the best position that way, because you don't have like a bona fide hit. Your crowd is there to hear all of your songs, which are hits to them. And I think you probably have bands like that in your listening experience too, and your fandom as well.
Yeah, we have never been a band that has experienced much success at radio,
right? And good,
and that we had big hits. That was sort of never the case for us. You mentioned the college radio station playing Spacegrass,
right?
And that's pretty typical for us. That for a lot of folks, that's how they learned about the band,
right?
And there's other ways too that people are discovering music, whether it's streaming like we've been getting into now, or video game placements, TV show placements. There's so many ways now that people are learning about music,
right?
And we're fortunate enough to I think have a sound that is sort of genreless in a lot of ways, and I think that opens us up to a lot of potential audience.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that's the perfect position. That was kind of what I'm getting at. It's like, you don't need radio hits. You guys are in the perfect position to just play whatever you want, and your fans are going to come along with you. It's pretty cool. It's a cool spot to be in.
Well, thank you.
Yeah. I mean, you speaking of the the Limp Bizkit, it's like 99, 2000 era. It seemed like between an album like Pure Rock Fury and Blast Tyrant, this was kind of, I always wanted to know this. Like, the band, it seemed to turn a big corner in terms of songwriting. Did something like change fundamentally with you guys around that time? And if so, what? Because I mean, Pure Rock Fury was a great rock record, and then you just came out with Blast Tyrant after that, and it was just next level stuff. I mean, was there something you guys was it a matter of just learning, getting better as a unit and individually, and it just kind of lightning in a bottle happened? Because I mean,
well, definitely. I mean, we've always strived to improve our playing, improve our songwriting, improve our performance, and that just comes from just getting out there and doing it, and having played so many gigs. The time that you're talking about specifically was in a lot of ways, it was kind of difficult for the band, because we were, at that point, we had bounced around from Atlantic to Columbia, back to Atlantic again for Pure Rock Fury. And you could see that the industry was definitely, it was getting ready to change. We knew something was happening there.
Right.
For us, the idea of trying to pursue another major label deal and play the major label game again was not really an option for us. So we knew it was time. We sort of have to take the bull by the horns, and we got to figure out what the next move is going to be. So there was a few things that we did. I think we concentrated a lot on songwriting. We tried to when we wrote the songs, we really tried to cut the fat as much as possible. Really try to boil those ideas down to the most essential elements of the tune. And so I think that helped us out a lot. We also worked with a producer named Machine at the time, and he had to record in a very different way. Up until then, we recorded in a sort of more traditional way, where the 3 or 4 dudes get in the studio, and we get sounds and we play the songs, and you play the song until you get it right, and then you might go back and patch up maybe bass or guitar here and there.
Right.
Machine came in with what was at that time for us a completely different way of recording, and a very modern way of recording. We relied on click tracks. We recorded our parts separately a lot of the time. We really listened to the vocal a lot. Machine was all about getting into that vocal and what was that vocal going to do. So I think there was a lot of pressure on Neil to come up with what the concept was going to be for the vocal early on in the songwriting process. Before that, a lot of times we would just sort of come up with the music, and we had a general idea of how the vocals were going to go, but the specific ideas were not really quite there. It was just sort of like we knew, okay, Neil's going to do a verse here, and we're going to make this kind of a verse. With Machine, we did a lot of pre-production, and we had a very good understanding of how the vocal was going to lay in the verse. So speaking as a drummer, for me, that was huge. I really started listening to how Neil was singing, what he was singing, and I did everything I could to support that vocal.
Right.
And I think the other guys did too. We were very much concentrating on getting that vocal to be sort of the most important part of the song, because while if you go to a Clutch show, I think there's a percentage of the audience who are drummers and probably guitarists,
yeah, right,
and bass players.
I'm one
but everybody's a singer, right? I mean, everybody sings, whether you sing in the car on your own, or whether you sing in a shower, or whether you sing in a band.
Right.
Everybody wants to sing. And so I think that was an important record for us, and that we realized, that's something everybody can sort of latch onto. And when you think of the music that way, it can make it easier to write a song, because there's not so many variables. I'm not really concerned about, oh man, I want to put this bitch and fill in here like right before I go into the second chorus, and so you guys got to give me some room to do that.
Right.
It's not about that. It's about the vocal. Make that vocal feel good, make it sound good, and make the singer feel as if the choices that he made are the absolute best choices.
Right.
And so I think in a lot of ways we learned a lot on that record, and for a lot of people it's their favorite album.
I mean, yeah, for a while, but you guys keep making great albums. So I mean, the next one's my favorite. No, it's hard to pick just one, but there's 2 drum questions I have for you. Speaking of click tracks, what do you think about them? I mean, you're more than capable of recording a take without one. Do you sometimes use them and then sometimes do not, just depending on what the song needs, and how
Sure.
do you feel about them?
Well, I'll say that, my first experiences with a click track were infuriating and frustrating,
right,
and depressing, all at the same time.
I feel you there, buddy.
and there's this idea that somehow a click track is going to make you stiff and it's going to take your feel away. And yeah, you know what? If you don't practice to a click track, you're going to sound like shit when you play to one.
Right.
So it's something that you have to develop. It's something that I still continue to work on every day. In fact, just before you called, I was down there working on stick control, and I was messing around with where I put the metronome. What beat of the metronome, what beat of the bar I'm going to put the metronome on. Right. And these are all skills that you can exercise to get better at playing with a click.
Wow.
So playing with a click opens you up a lot as far as being able to record multiple takes and getting those takes to jive, getting those takes to work together.
Right.
And then learning how to sort of lean on the click. You can sort of push against it, or you can pull against it, but as long as you have a kind of an understanding of where it is.
Right.
And then sometimes too, in a live situation, maybe we're sound checking a song that we haven't played in quite some time. I'll go back to the record and I'll listen to where that tempo is, and I'll sound check with the click.
Right.
And the band. And that sort of just kind of reminds me where that song sits tempo wise.
Okay.
And it's kind of a reset button,
Right. Yeah.
But that's not to say that you can't make great records without it, because of course, the vast majority of records recorded in the last 100 years have not been recorded to a click track. And
absolutely,
there's some some amazing performances out there. So it's not to say that it's the best way. It's just a way.
Right.
And if we want to be successful in this thing, you got to learn everything that you can learn about the instrument. And so if that means spending some time to work with a click track, that's in the end, it's a tool that you'll use for the rest of your life.
Right. Yeah, it's definitely an acquired skill that takes, like you said, a lot of work to do.
But the thing is, you can work on it though.
Right.
There's some stuff that's just sort of talent that people are born with. I was never one of those drummers. I'm not one of those guys who came out being able to just rip chops all day long. Right. I got to work for everything that I play.
Right.
Your time is something you can work on as a drummer. There are many tools that we can use. And you can develop that thing, and you can continue to develop it. And I can tell when I haven't practiced with a click, and I go to play with one. Ouch, man, it hurts.
Yeah, right.
So you got to exercise it constantly, or it will go away.
Do you practice every day?
I try to. Yeah.
I mean,
I was just practicing before you called, actually.
And even on tour, I saw a video you were practicing in the equipment trailer prior to the show, and I'm like, man, this guy is next level.
Well, I find that actually practicing on the road is a little easier for me, just because there are less distractions out there. Right. Sort of the entire day is based around playing.
Right.
Whereas, when we're off the road, everyday life pops up, and there's stuff that you got to do, like bring in the recycling. I'm sitting here looking at my recycling container. I got to bring that in. Or whatever it is, going to the warehouse and accepting deliveries or just everyday stuff. So
right.
I actually find it a little easier to practice on the road.
Right.
But it's important, I think, for us musicians to set aside time every day, carve out some time.
I think so.
And even if it's only 10 minutes, make it a good 10 minutes and practice some cool stuff. Practice in an efficient way. Be mindful. Don't just get up there and just start bashing away on a pad.
Right.
Think about what it is you're doing, and I think you'll find that a little bit of efficient practicing will go a long way.
Right. No, you're inspiring me, man. I got 2 drum kits. One's here, and then one's in Maryland, where my guitar player is. So I'm gonna have to go back and snag that thing up, bring it into the house, and make the old lady angry. You know what I mean? As far as songwriting goes and the philosophy of drums, I mean, there seems to be from listening to some of the songs, it seems that every song's so different, and I know I have a hunch that some songs are written around a drum part. And some examples would be something like Crucial Velocity, the pattern at the beginning of that, and maybe something like Burning Beard. Did you have those patterns and then they wrote it around you, or was it still based on like a guitar riff or something?
Yeah, well, I can speak specifically about Crucial Velocity. That actually came from practice. I was practicing playing figures in my left hand over a steady 16th note, sort of ostinato on the bass drum.
Right.
I was taking exercises out of a drum book called Syncopation, one of my favorite books.
Right.
So oftentimes I find myself doing that. I'm practicing something that is very sort of just scholastic, in that it's not really meant to be music. It's more of just meant to be a musical exercise or a mental exercise.
Right.
So oftentimes though, those things sort of become musical ideas.
Right.
And so that those verses in Crucial Velocity came from exactly that, just practicing something and then having that sort of grow into a musical idea. And I brought that into the guys and said, look, just play some open chords over this thing. This is going to sound killer.
Right.
And so it's fun.
Yeah.
And again, it just comes from practicing. As far as Burning Beard goes, that was a little different. I was practicing playing sort of swung patterns, jazzy kind of patterns, and I started messing around with playing these patterns in odd times. So I remember I was working on a sort of 7 kind of jazzy thing, and the majority of the song was sort of written around that sort of more swung 7 feel.
Right.
And it wasn't until we got in the studio to record the song that Jay Robbins, our producer at the time, said, "Hey, you could play that same idea, but you could straighten out the hi-hats and play it so more of a straight thing,
Right.
and that would sound different." And that kind of made the song kind of a sort of a two-part idea. So you got grooves that are similar in some ways. One is just a sort of a more straightened version of the swung version,
Right.
and that came from Jay Robbins. I've learned a lot about drums with Jay. He's a great producer, and he has a great ear for not only drum sounds but drum ideas.
Right. That's wonderful, man. You probably want to work with him all the time then. You're like,
He's awesome.
he's my
Love
guy. Yeah.
it. Yeah.
Well, I mean, speaking of Crucial Velocity, I mean, around the time Earthrocker came out, I mean, us longtime fans were like, yeah, another Clutch record, but it seemingly was your breakout album. I mean, the venues got much bigger after that tour, or on that first tour for that record. What do you think happened around the release to catapult the band to the next level?
Well, I think there was a couple things. Earthrocker was the second release that we did on our very own label,
Right.
on Weathermaker.
Right.
The first being Strange Cousins from the West.
Right.
We learned a lot on Strange Cousins from the West as far as how to release albums, how to set albums up. And so when we went in to do Earthrocker, we took the lessons that we learned from Strange Cousins and applied them to the release of Earthrocker. And so the way we set up the record was a little different. The way that we promoted the record was a little different. The way that we toured the record was a little different as well.
Right.
I think we were much more calculated in how we rolled the music out and what that process was like. So I think because of that, we had a better opening week, and we were able to take that momentum and sort of stretch it out. We had a really good run with that record. But at the end of the day, I think it really has to do with the music.
Right.
That record was written with the intention of making a very rock record. We wanted something that was upbeat. We wanted something that was sort of maybe even a more raw version of what we had done before. And
Right.
I think we were successful.
Yeah.
That was also a record that we worked with Machine again. We hadn't worked with him since Blast Tyrant.
Right.
So he seems to come in like right when we're ready to make a change. We seem to get him involved, and he sort of seems to help us do that. So
Right.
so props to Machine as well.
Yeah, he's done a great job. That's a very cohesive, fantastic record. I mean, how has the experience of running a record label changed the way you think of the business side of playing music? I mean, is running a label these days still a profitable venture at the level that Weathermaker does it? I mean, I'm perplexed by it because I don't know what to think anymore as far as record sales go. It's like, what is that even a thing anymore? I don't even know.
Right. Yeah, I don't know. Your guess is as good as mine. I can tell you that when we started the record label, we quickly realized how much more fun it was to be a band.
Right.
And by that I mean we did not have to we didn't have to battle with the label, because even after we could do whatever we want, because even after we left the major labels and we went to DRT for Blast Tyrant, the disagreements with the label never changed. The money didn't come that they said they were going to pay us. We did a different kind of a deal back then. They called it a 50-50 deal. And so this was a deal in which the label would shell out, an initial amount of expenses, whether it was a recording budget, maybe some promotion and radio.
Right.
But when those monies were recouped, the label and the band were to share in the profits equally. And at that time, that was a revolutionary idea.
Right.
The problem with that is that the label has to follow through with their end of the bargain.
Right.
And in true label form, it was not the case. So we traded one set of headaches for another set of headaches.
Right.
And I can tell you, when we finished our term with DRT, we were ecstatic,
Right.
and we said to ourselves, look, man, well, we're going to make our own label, and even if we do a crummy job at running a label, our label's going to be better than any other label, because we can fuck it up just as bad as they can, and not have to
Right.
have the headaches.
Right.
So each release that we made, is a learning process. Um, and but I tell you, it's a lot more fun to make mistakes on your own than it is to
Right.
watch a label make them for you.
Right.
So
Because you're not going to drop yourself. You know.
we're not going to drop ourselves unless we really suck. Well, you never know.
Yeah. It's like I'm done. Yeah. You're fired. You know. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like yeah. I don't know. It's so bizarre these days as far as the music industry goes. It's like the recent Vault series it seemed to me to be a good idea for you guys. I mean, just the single format, is that a kind of a way to dip your toes in like towards the streaming crowd, you know?
Yeah, for sure. I feel like the Vault series kind of works on two levels. On a creative level, it lets us get into the studio and record a few songs. Whether it's 2 or 5.
Right.
But we're not necessarily concerned about making an entire album, which
Right.
can be a really heavy lift.
Right. Oh yeah. I know.
So, as you know, it kind of gives us a little bit of flexibility, and it's a sort of a fun, low stress way to go in the studio. But then on a label executive side, it gives us a chance to experiment a little differently with each release. So each one that we put out, the way that we market it and the way that we promote it is a little different, and
Right.
and we pay attention to how those things affect the response that song gets.
Right.
And so ultimately, all these lessons that we learn are going to inform how we release the next record. So we're very much thinking about that. We're very much thinking about new music. And as much as we like the Vault series, we definitely want to we want to release a full record as well. We don't want we don't want the remainder of our career to consist of singles here and there.
Yeah.
I think it's important for fans of our genre of rock and roll and heavy metal. We want a whole record. We want an entire thought.
Yeah.
And we want an experience.
I think that art form is comfortably under the umbrella of Clutch. I mean, I think your fans, I can just speak for myself. Yeah, I want full lengths. So you answered my next question. I was gonna ask. I was like, there's still gonna be full lengths, right? But I mean,
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. We're gonna continue to do that, and that's for us. I think that's going to be the next move. You might see a few more Vault series singles come out in the coming months, but for us, we're very much thinking about what the next album is going to be, and how that's going to come together. It's fun to release songs here and there. It's super fun to record covers.
Yeah.
But these days, you know what, man? It's like the industry it's like the Wild West, man. We can do whatever we want. There are no rules.
Right.
And I think the folks who are most creative and the most innovative, those are going to be the ones that are going to experience the most success.
I think you're correct on that. Yeah. It's yeah. I think you hit it right on the head there. So I mean, now that you guys have been in quarantine, are you actually hashing out some demos or for new material? Does new material exist?
Yep. Yeah, we've been working on that really since the beginning of the year.
Okay.
We get together at the warehouse, record ideas, give that idea a name, and we put it in a Dropbox, and we just let it sort of marinate there. And we continue to sort of stockpile these ideas. And as we get closer to the recording, we start mining those riffs and those concepts for songs. And a lot of times those ideas will oftentimes cannibalize one another.
Right.
And so it's a pretty cutthroat process.
Yeah.
If you're a Clutch demo, you're one of many ideas, and chances are you're not going to make the cut.
Right. Yeah. I mean, you guys put sometimes 15 songs on a record. Is there 30 songs that exist and you're picking 15? I mean, how does that go?
I think at this point there are probably, I don't know, I'm guessing 15 to 20 ideas. I don't know how many songs are in there just yet.
Right. Do you guys have a lot of unreleased material in a vault somewhere? I mean, I would assume you do because you're so prolific. I mean, you got a bunch of ideas out there, but just locked up somewhere.
Yeah. There is some stuff in the vaults. Um, the for us though, it's more about, it's tough to get excited about, like, let's listen to a recording from 2007.
Yeah,
Like,
right. Yeah, you're moving on. Yeah, you got to move. I
yeah.
completely understand that. Yeah, that hits home for me too. It's like I don't want to listen to that shit again, man. What the fuck, always moving on as an artist. I mean, that's usually the mentality of most artists. Okay, that pretty much wraps it up for now. I know you do a lot of session work. You just did the Spy Machines record. Is there anything you want to promote or shout out before we call it a day on the pod?
Yeah, the Spy Machines record is a release that we put out on Weathermaker. It's a project that I'm involved with. I play drums on it. My friend Mark Stanley, who is a guitarist from Maryland, who we've known actually for a very long time. Believe it or not, Mark actually played on the very first Clutch release ever, the Pitchfork 7-inch.
Right on, yeah.
He came in and played some leads on that. So I've known Mark for, man, almost 30 years now.
Wow.
Mark is an incredible talent. He's got a very unique voice on the guitar. I don't know anybody who plays quite like him. He's a very gifted songwriter, and so he wrote all the songs. Hank from the band Lion Eyes plays bass.
Oh, right on, yeah. Okay.
And then the incredible Mike Dillon plays percussion and vibraphone. And so it's a cool mix. It's a record does not sound like Clutch. I think it's closer to maybe the Melvins or Frank Zappa or even Talking Heads than it is Clutch. It's out there.
Yeah, listen to it. I mean, the drums definitely sound like you if anyone's a drum fan. Yeah.
Yeah, I sort of can't help that.
Yeah, shame. No, it's great. It's awesome. Okay, man. I guess that about wraps it up. But let's do a face to face next time you guys come to Cleveland, whenever that's going to be, and we'll hope maybe we can set up a good conversation. I have a co-host, so maybe he can be in on this one, and we'll have a good time. That'd be great to do.
Awesome. That sounds like a good time. I look forward to it.
JP, man, I really appreciate it. You're one of my biggest influences. I've been listening to you for a long time, and it was a thrill for me to do this. So let's do it again, hopefully soon.
It's an honor and a pleasure. I appreciate you having me. Thank you.
Thank you, man. Be well, and take care of yourself out there, and I'll see you soon.
See you soon.